I just have some general framing thoughts about some issues to keep in mind, I think, that I'd like us to keep in mind throughout the conference. These, I think, are really nothing that will be particularly new or striking to most of you all, but it's a way of just sort of putting some things up front, I think, that are of concern, certainly to me. So as we're going through this, one of the first general themes or issues about genetics and society is, for me, the double edge of these diverse technologies we're looking at. And in many respects, this is something very obvious from, ranging from prenatal testing to the flip side of eugenics, or green revolution to monoculture, and Roundup-ready crops and things of that sort. But also, more fundamentally for me, is a concern that this very powerful area of knowledge that's being produced and reproduced daily and is becoming so powerful and pervasive a way of thinking about such a broad array of not just scientific but social and political issues in the world, is leading to an increase or acceleration of a tendency to frame very complex social problems as fundamentally technical or scientific problems, and sort of eroding, or excuse me, doing the reverse of that, of sort of erecting this, this false boundary between technique and politics in a way that leads us to think that, oh, we just need to focus on the science and that the science will get us through this. And I think this is something that is very powerful. And it's obviously not restricted just to genetic technology, but is, I think, extremely prominent in this area. And it's something that applies across all the domains and all the different subject areas we'll be discussing this weekend. So just be thinking about how is this divide or this relationship between science and society being constructed or broken down in these various domains as we're talking about it, and what the implications of that are in different contexts. Because for my work, I work particularly on issues of race and genetics. The question of how this can, addressing problems of racial disparities in health, turning that into a function of molecules as opposed to a function of social justice, a function of just sort of fixing people's biology as opposed to addressing historic embedded structures of discrimination, is a real concern. And I think that happens in a lot of areas, a way of diverting attention of resources away from that. Related to that is a second concern with sort of unanticipated or unintended consequences of this technology as it's developed. And with particular sensitivity to questions of, I guess I call them path dependence, that as we're erecting certain kinds of approaches to genetic problems or to the problems that genetic research is supposed to solve, that sort of embeds us in a path, embeds government resources or social resources in a path that puts blinders on us. And to think about, again, as we're talking across these diverse domains, what is our approach here, or an approach that we may be criticizing, what is it blinding us to? And to be careful about the inertia of being along one path and not being able to see what's off to the side. So I guess it's sort of a mixed metaphor of path dependence and blinders. And then third, and again, I think it grows out of both of these two previous issues, is considering the need to constantly be aware of the balance, or trying to maintain a balance among state, the market, civil society, and individuals in terms of framing sources of problems, framing approaches to addressing those problems, and framing responsibility then for taking action to address those problems, like where we're locating problems and responses, the role of the state, the market, civil society, or individuals. And again, very politically charged, the way we're framing and locating particular problems in those different domains, and just being sensitive to that and its implications. And again, the sort of paths that might put us down. And for me, again, particularly, I have this concern, beating my anti-neoliberal or anti-neoconservative drum, the idea that markets will solve everything. And there is this very interesting, powerful connection between markets and science in this regard, sort of the ideology of markets and the ideology of science, being that they are both this sort of value-neutral way to resolve these problems without engaging in the messy, tough work of social and political action. So again, and part of that, and I like to think of that as a question of balance, because it's not like we're going to do away with capitalist markets, but it's a matter of sort of keeping different things in appropriate relation to each other. Again, and a side concern about that is, there are a lot of people here from academia, and one of my concerns has been particularly in the area of biotech, the way the explosion of biotech in the last 20 years is transforming academia into being viewed as a profit center, where the life sciences are being viewed as, a cash cow, a golden goose, or whatever other animal you wish to choose. And again, it's leading to a real, I think, imbalance in the conceptualization of what the role and purpose of academia in broader society is. And that's, again, sort of some of the, in a sense, kind of the unanticipated consequences of this embrace of biotechnology. And then finally, just a couple of other points in my minute and 25 seconds. Thinking in response to this is thinking strategically then about what we're going to do about this. Think in terms of sort of what points of leverage are there for us, right? Sort of the flip side of path dependence. As we're going through this, what are the little, rather than just sort of taking this huge, we've got to, solve the general problem, thinking about where are there targeted points of leverage for specific interventions to try to make a particular difference in, again, whatever particular issue we might be discussing in our little tables. But to think of it in terms of leverage points, whether it's something like the ACLU lawsuit against Myriad, whether it's about gene patenting, whether it's something like talking about, we need to have sort of like an automatic requirement in state laws that if, DNA is taken from you upon arrest, that if you're not convicted, it just gets expunged from the record. And, any little particular points where you think there's, you can make that sort of shift of the path. And then generally, as we're talking, to think about making, there are a lot of separate breakout sessions on different topics, but to think about the commonality of these general concerns across domains as we're going through this, and keep that in mind about drawing connections among ourselves as well. And boom.